platform is actually giving us this opportunity to be together, to learn together, and to grow together. So in person, if I say I'm a life member, as I said, and now presently Sir has and Madam has given me the opportunity to be president of this organization for a year. So I feel very privileged and I express sincere gratitude to them. And I believe that this platform is actually giving a lot by organizing various academic events. Even in pandemic, we were doing unstoppable events and we gathered the galaxy of intellects and we learned a lot. That time it was an opportunity, a blessing in disguise. We took out a lot of things during COVID-19. Urmi ma'am must be agree with me, and Anita madam as well. So we conducted FDPs, faculty development programs, conferences of national and international repute, and we conducted various workshops. And we have given opportunity to the researchers to present their work and to carry on their academic activity despite of a lot of hurdles which we all have faced during pandemic 2020 and 2021 as well. So GAP is giving us that platform. GAP is also having its own publications, journals of national and international repute, and one of its journal is also listed in UGC Care. And also they have various book projects wherein the members get benefit of those book projects, and they can share their own piece of articles and research papers and books, and compendiums are being developed by GAP periodically. So basically this is all about the GAP initiatives. With this, one of the most important initiative of GAP is GAC, which is Global Academic Assessment Consortium, which actually facilitates to generate the awareness among HEIs about the process and system which ensures the quality enhancement and realization of goals set in higher education. We all know about this, that present era is about the assessment and accreditation, and government is getting stringent day by day on these things because the quality is really being compromised nowadays. We all are witness of that. And if you see SDG 4, quality education, one of the most important sustainable development goal, which this year, our own state is also focusing on, to focus on that SDG 4 from the primary level, starting from the primary level education. So this is very, very important. And in this recently, I would like to share, and I'm happy to share that the GAP and GAC has introduced one of the unique certificate course, ICARET, International Certified Assessment Ranking and Accreditation Trainer, which enables a person, or which enables us to have a deep insights about various accreditation measurements and yardsticks of quality excellence across globe. So what in nutshell I can say is that GAP is doing a lot for the higher education fraternity, because GAP believes is to deliver quality to achieve quality. So I think this conference is also one of the part of this initiative, and the day-long activity which will be carried out subsequently by the members, paper presentations, and as I said, keynote speakers and the guests who will be sharing their thoughts and wisdoms. At the end of the day, we will be definitely coming up with something concrete in the arena as we talk about the recycling about the arts. So thank you to all. Thank you, Jappi sir. Thank you, Preeti ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to be on this platform. Aap sabhi ko mera namaskar. Thank you.
Thank
you
very
now
much.
Invite sir, Karthik sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. If I'm not wrong, मैं कार्तिक सर को काफी अच्छे से जानती हूँ. We work together, sir. If I'm not wrong.
You're absolutely right.
It's इसी को कहते हैं कि जो कहते हैं वो क्या, दुनिया बहुत छोटी है.
बहुत छोटी है.
Yeah, I worked under the leadership of Dr. Karthik Jain sir. Thank you, sir, for being here, and thank you for being source of inspiration always. It's great. It's a pleasure to have you here. So it's now the show is over to you. You have to carry this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Before sir starts, Dr. Karthik Jain, this is a warm welcome to you on this GAP platform. And it's an honor and privilege to get associated with such an esteemed university of yours, and would love to have you on many more such events. And as Dr. Jory has rightly said, that we are here for the coordination and networking of resources. And today we are having you here with us as a very, innovative, wonderful resource for all our GAP Life members. And so looking forward to working with you on a really mutually benefit ground. And again, a warm welcome, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. So kind of you. So it's really my pleasure to be on the platform of Gyan Adhyan and Parampara, that is GAP. And I am really thankful to organizers for inviting me to this presidential remarks session of 20th International Online Conference on Cultural Recycling from the Arts, that is Hybridization and Transculturality, jointly organized by Swarnim Startup Innovation University and Grand Academic Portal. So before we start, I just want to say a few words about Swarnim Startup Innovation University. As its name suggests, it's India's first and one of its kind university in the field of startups. And I am very happy to share that we are the only university across India who has introduced startup and entrepreneurship as a core subject in all the courses which university running and in all the 9 institutes of the university. And each subject is having a credit of 3. So it's all because of my faculty members and my mentors and my staff members of the university, we are able to achieve this height. So I am really thankful to Dr. Ojha for inviting to this particular conference, Dr. Sangeeta Johari for her fabulous inaugural and welcome speech. So when we talk about hybridization and transculturality, there is a very specific meaning and it's a new kind of thing. If I start and if I give you certain basic examples, if I say, let's talk about Kellogg's. Kellogg's basically is a American brand. And you see, in America, the eating habits, breakfast habits are quite different as compared to India. So when they were launching their products for India, their CEO very proudly said, we are here to change the habits of Indians. Now we will see why don't they do breakfast as we the citizens of USA do. So, but I think just within a span of 2 decades, they are able to know that nobody can change the basic sanskar and basic individuality of our Indian consumers. That is the reason, that is the main reason why Kellogg's was forced to change its strategy in India, and they are forced to bring products according to the requirements of Indian consumers. Same way, if we talk about McDonald's, they are also forced to bring pure veg and all kind of stuff according to taste of Indian consumers in the market. Not only consumer related organizations and industries, manufacturers of luxury automobiles were also forced to bring products as per the requirement of Indian consumers. So that because of hybridization and transculturality of the Indian society and Indian consumer base. So when I am basically having a specialization in business policy and strategic management, and I used to do a lot of consultancy with various corporates and other organizations for the purpose of bringing their problem areas into a solution one. So when we talk about transculturality, it's a very important factor. Even if we, like say, I am not talking about the world as a whole, but I am talking about India, which comprise of various states. So when I was working in Madhya Pradesh and when I moved to Gujarat, there was a बहुत बड़ा difference था. There was a big difference in the working methodology and each and everything which I faced, and I felt everything was for good. So when, as an academician, when we want to introduce cultural hybridity and transculturality into academics, we are supposed to understand, we have to understand the psychology and mindset of the consumers, or you can say the center of attraction on the basis of which we want to perform our studies. Unless until we understand the basic mindset, we cannot grab the actual objectives or actual objectives of our study, why we want to do it. So it's a long process, and I am very sure that, like, all my academic fraternity who are available, who are there right now in this particular session, will be able to say a lot of things regarding this particular topic. So once again, I am really thankful to organizers of Gyan Adhyan Parampara and all the distinguished panel members who are right now in the forum. And I am really thankful to them for providing us this opportunity, Swarnim Startup and Innovation University, to be a part of Gyan Adhyan Parampara portal. And it's a unique initiative taken care. And I am really thankful to all the organizers. So over to you, Dr. Priti ma'am.
Thank you. This was such a wonderful start, Dr. Jain. And as rightly said, that the things are changing and changing for good, especially for us Indians, because as you have rightly put the example of also MACD, and then how we are actually on the threshold of, changing either from here to there or there to here. So the entire new generation, luckily with whom we are dealing with, and we have that opportunity to shape their mind and, values. So really thankful to you, sir, for such kind words. Sangeeta ma'am, can we go ahead with the further event, please? I think Sangeeta ma'am is not in network. Jappi sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here only.
Yes, maybe you are out of network. So I just say that we can continue with the next speakers, ma'am, and then.
Yes, ma'am, I think we may proceed with the next keynote speaker address because we are already on time. We welcome Dr. Shalina ma'am, and we are waiting for ma'am's keynote address. Ma'am, please. Ma'am, we are not able to hear you. Can you please unmute yourself?
Are you hearing me? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Am I audible right? Yes. Am I audible
Yes.
right now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Shall I start now? Or...
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Please.
Yes. Namaskar to everybody. I wish you all a very, very good morning. And I'm really, really thankful to the organizers of the Grand Academic Portal.
Shailana ma'am.
Yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I think that was some network issue on my side. And I would first like the esteemed audience to know a little bit about you, with such a kind of esteemed personality. Just give me 1 minute. I would like to share your introduction with the public, and then you may start, ma'am.
Right.
Little bit, lagging behind for the network issue. Just a minute, ma'am.
Fine. Good, Dr. Priti.
Just a minute, ma'am. I would like to share the screen if possible. Just a minute, ma'am. not able to share the screen right now, ma'am. I'm really sorry for that.
Oh.
So meanwhile, we would like to invite Dr. Shailana Ramedu, a very esteemed, kind of a researcher from the MGI Mahatma Gandhi Institute, um, Republic of Mauritius. She has been involved in the, kind of activities which are also in the field and on the stage and in the classroom. So she is a kind of a personality which is, having a kind of a multimodal kind of experience. So we can say a 3D personality or maybe a 4D personality, because when it comes to the concept of culture, aesthetics, when it comes to cross-cultural, ideas, Dr. Shailana ma'am is, one of the best personalities to represent, as I have told you, the classroom, the research field, and the performance stage. And there is a long list of her achievements and all. Meanwhile, I'll be sharing about Dr. Shailana, but just now I would like to have Dr. Shailana with us with her very, very, invigorating kind of speech, which we have already experienced in various platforms, in various GAP activities. It's again a pleasure, ma'am, to have you with us today, and the stage is all yours. Thank you.
I really thank you very much for this warm introduction. Namaskar, everybody. I am really, really thankful to the organizers of the Grand Academic Portal and the Swarnim Startup and Innovation University for this privilege and this unique opportunity of being the keynote speaker, that is, giving a keynote address for this 20th International Online Conference. I welcome as well all participants to this conference, and it is a real pleasure for me to share and interact with you. I would like to start with, am I screen sharing? Is it, can you see the screen that I'm sharing right now? Is it, can I carry on?
Ma'am, we can see your screen. If you can just put it on the...
Fine. Okay, all right. That's what, so, the title of my, let's say, keynote address is one of the building blocks of quality assurance system is in management is continuous improvement. And likewise, arts, performing arts education inbuilds the mechanism of continuous improvement within individuals. My question is there a form of hybridization of concepts or complementarity between these two fields in order to further innovation, which is so urgently needed in our present world of new norms? So one of the building blocks of towards total quality management is a philosophy based on continuous improvement. Similarly, in arts, performing arts education, the process of continuous improvement is said to pave the way for imagination, creativity, innovation. In this keynote address, I will analyze, I might not be able to be analyzing everything, but I will try and just select a number of what I'm going to list down. I will analyze on the whole the philosophy of continuous improvement for quality, both in arts education as well as in management. In management, it is done through quality audits mainly, so as to ensure continuous improvement in the organization. The second thing I'll try to talk briefly about is this engagement with quality, content, and standards. Quality is a key value in arts education, and the quality audits in management concern themselves mainly for effectiveness and efficiency in the production of the organization. The third element that I'm talking about is the target of perfection in arts education and the zero defect concept in quality management. You'll see that these two are very similar, but there's an interesting difference that I'll talk about later. The fourth element I will talk is very briefly about high performance, both in arts education and in the performance management system. And I will talk also about innovation, both in the art field as well as in the management field. I will also end up with 2 or 3 examples of research evidences on some characteristics of the artistic process and their similarities with quality assurance framework tasks. I'm going to take a small example of quality assurance framework tasks and establish the parallel with the artistic process. For example, how art students learn to take control of their own learning through arts education. For example, also parallels with a set of mental habits which are acquired in the arts, particularly visual arts. Also, I will draw parallels between quality assurance framework tasks and a set of mental habits which advanced musicians acquire in the field of arts education. So I'll start straight away with continuous improvement for quality in arts education as well as in the management area, quality by the quality audits. In arts education, the idea of quality enters the mind of the student because the student is made to strive to make his next work better than the last one. This process is called a process of continuous improvement. In parallel, quality audits are widely used as a verification process within an organization where they put emphasis on the continuous improvement mechanism of this organization. The second thing is that in arts education, there's real engagement with quality content of the artwork. It takes hard work, repeated practice, repeated assessment, rigor, force the student to achieve quality in any artwork, be it poetry, song, music, dance, drama, etc. In parallel, the purpose of quality audits in the management area is to assess the strength of the quality culture of an organization in terms of quality actions, quality processes, etc., which the organization has put in place in order to ensure continuous improvement, again, towards quality. The second thing that I'm going to talk very briefly about is this engagement with content, quality, and standards. In any work of art, be it song, poetry, painting, music, dance, drama, etc., standard and quality is the key value. They insist on quality as the key value. In parallel, quality audits in the field of management are concerned about the existence of quality mechanisms within an organization. In arts education, there is an arts education establishes a strong connection between the effort of the artist or the student or the art student. It establishes a strong connection between the effort and quality of the result. And in parallel, quality audits are concerned with effectiveness of the effort put in an organization, which will guarantee the quality of the result. Thirdly, in an arts education, students come to understand and value what makes a work of art good. Therefore, students learn what it means to work to a standard. In parallel, quality audits concern themselves with the efficiency of quality processes, quality actions, etc., which organizations have put in place so that the organization does not merely achieve its set objectives, but produces desired quality outcomes and quality goals. I will talk about now the target of perfection in arts education and the zero defect concept in quality management. A student of art, as I told you before, is made to strive to make his present work of art better than the previous one. So gradually, a spirit of continuous improvement enters the student's mind because he is made to aim at what an artistic mind's target is, that is, the target of perfection. And this is why true, real artistic minds never stop in their progression. Whatever level they reach, they are engaged continuously into improving their work till they reach the target level of perfection. Now, none of the artists actually know where is situated exactly or approximately this target level of perfection. Some call it infinity, some call it God. There are many names given to it. But what is for sure is that advanced artists have a lifetime commitment and a non-stop engagement towards raising the standard and quality of their work. Now, in parallel, in quality management, we have the zero defect concept. The zero defect philosophy is a powerful quality management philosophy. The concept explores business processes streamlined to implement and execute approaches to create the highest quality goods and services. According to Philip Crosby, he is the one who brought about this zero defect concept. Workers must make the attitude of zero defect their personal standard. The person who commits himself to watch each detail and carefully avoid error takes the giant step towards setting a goal to zero defects. As the word itself indicates, zero defect is where there is no defects at all. Therefore, a zero defect goal is about striving for a perfect process. But Philip Crosby, the one, as I said, who brought about this concept of zero defect, he questions, is it reasonable to expect people to be perfect? Probably not, he says. Zero defect has nothing to do with being perfect. A very important reason he gives to that, he says that despite inputs which are being invested, there may be negative elements which impact negatively on the performance, on the end performance. And this can put a strain on the motivation, the morale, and the self-satisfaction of people. Just like in the art field, there are artists or students of art, etc., who at some stage may have worked so much, but due to some factors beyond their control, they do not achieve the end performance, the end success that they targeted. So Philip Crosby says that, he says, perform to the requirement which you have agreed to and do it right every time. So you can see here in quality management, the zero defect goal, that is, in other words, a target of perfection that we call in arts education. In quality in management, it is deliberately limited while taking into consideration the morale, the motivation of people in the organization. Whereas in the arts education field, nothing is said about the limitation of the target of perfection. The target of perfection is left open. The artist may climb to whatever level and decide to stop at whatever level of perfection he or she wants. I just say a few words about high performance, high achievement in both quality management and arts education. Both fields push people to perform and to produce by offering models of excellence. In the management area, the performance management system is a key enabler in driving operational excellence. It not only helps to build recognition of performance, but above all, it develops a high performance culture. In the arts education field, there are the students are pushed to perform and produce by clearly defining paths for achieving it. The thinking skills inherent in art disciplines teach students how the parts of a work of art fit together, how to create works of art using disparate materials and ideas, and how to judge the quality of the finished product, whether their own or that of others. In the management area, performance gaps are evaluated in an organization. For example, training needs are identified, new targets are set, employees' career progression are set, etc. And these are steps that maintain ongoing performance, which are aligned with key performance indicators, which are defined on the basis of the objectives of the organization, for example, the goals, performance standards, etc. Now, I'm going to talk about creativity, innovation in both the artistic field, arts education, and the field of quality management. The ultimate objective of real arts education is not merely an appreciation for the arts, but rather that of going beyond the appreciation of the arts. It not only includes development of artistic skills or mastery of knowledge or persistence for bringing quality and standard in one's artwork, but above all, it includes performance and creation of products and performance. Like in parallel, in quality management, it is widely accepted that quality management strategically supports the management of innovation. Employees of an organization are considered as an asset, and the performance management system ensures utmost utilization of assets. And one of the utmost targets is innovation. An innovative spirit in the management world is one of the fundamentals for the success of an organization. In the same way, in the artistic world or the arts education world, the peak of success is innovation in one's artwork. But innovation remains a specificity of the human intuitive mind, much more than the machine or the computer could do, because they can limit themselves to permutations and combinations within set algorithms, for example, which had been fed into as a computer software. Similarly, in arts education, we can feed the computer with the logic behind the technique of painting, singing, dramatizing, dancing, etc. But what is not accessible to the student, what the student cannot learn through the computer or the machine, is to go beyond the technique of poetry, painting, singing, etc. And this is precisely the intuitive sphere of the art subjects. When you intuit, when there is intuition of men, then there is innovation. Machines do not intuit. I'm going to bring to you now 2 or 3 examples of some research evidences on some characteristics of the artistic process and similarities with quality assurance framework tasks. I'm going to take just a small example of a set of quality assurance framework tasks and establish parallels between 2 examples of research evidences. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to take this example of a quality assurance framework task and establish the parallel with art students in arts education who learn to take control of their own learning. And I'm going to start with the first one task of the quality assurance is to assist institutions in putting in place their specific quality assurance systems. Now, in parallel, the art students, they learn to through arts education, they learn to take control of their own learning by understanding how to set goals to reach for quality artwork. The second task of a quality assurance can be prepare institutions to undertake their self-assessment. And in parallel, art students learn to take control of their own learning by understanding how to monitor their progress so that they can ensure that there is ongoing quality in their artwork. Another example of the quality assurance framework task is to undertake external quality audit of institutions. And this can be paralleled with the art student who learns to take control of his own learning by understanding how to know and comprehend his own thinking processes. In other words, even through self-assessment exercises, students in the arts education learn to assess themselves the level of quality that they have reached in their artwork. Both through self-assessment and external assessment, they cultivate an autonomous capacity to assess the quality level that they have reached. I will now take an example of, I'll take the same example of quality assurance framework task, and I'll establish the parallels between what we call self-regulation, a set of mental habits which are developed in the arts education, and I'll speak specifically of visual arts. So I take again the same quality assurance task, that of assisting institutions in putting in place their specific quality assurance systems. And this can be paralleled with mental habits which are acquired in the arts, and specifically in the visual arts. One mental habit is that of setting goals, which I talked about earlier. This is setting goals to ensure that one reaches quality, which is a key value in any work of art. The second mental habit which is being cultivated in the arts is called problem solving. And in visual arts, we particularly call it envisioning. Envisioning is a process of mental formation of images towards solutions and guidance to problems, including the planning ahead of steps to move ahead. A third mental habit which is developed in the arts is taking risks. Again, in visual arts and in other art disciplines as well, we call it innovation. Here, art students or artists extrapolate their acquired creative sense so as to move beyond what they have known. That is, using the central skill to explore the unknown to the extent of deliberately allowing for the possibility of mistakes in order to bring about unexpected designs, discoveries, etc. A second task of the quality assurance framework can be preparing institutions to undertake their self-assessment. Here, this can be paralleled with a mental habit which is being acquired through arts education, that is observation. And art students or artists are trained to maintain precise and neutral perceptions in the continuous observation of their artwork. Another mental habit which is developed is reflection. And this, I'm showing this reflection which takes place in visual arts as well as in other disciplines like music, dance, drama, poetry, etc. Artworking is characterized by stepping back repeatedly to cast a new look, each time reanalyzing with self-judgment and an autocritical eye, to the point of having to reconceive entirely the achieved production if needed. And the undertaking of external quality audit by institutions, which is a task of the quality assurance framework task, can be also paralleled with observation, which I have just explained, as an external assessment as well as from an internal assessment, that is the personal observation of the artist himself, as well as the external observation of people who watch his work of art. So the quality assessment exercises carried out by the quality assurance can also be included in this can be paralleled with this habit of using feedback through internal and external observation. I'll talk about a last research set of research evidences on some characteristics of the artistic process and the quality management assurance framework task. I'll take again the same example and I'll make parallels between self-regulation, that is a set of habits which are usually developed in advanced musicians. This has been researched and proved. So I again take the task of quality assurance, which is that of assisting institutions in putting in place their specific quality assurance systems. This can be paralleled by a mental habit by advanced musicians, which is that of setting clear, measurable goals and creating effective strategies for practice. Another task of the quality assurance is to prepare institutions to undertake their self-assessment, and this can be paralleled by a mental habit of advanced musicians of developing ways to of self-monitoring their progress and structuring optimal learning conditions. A third task of the quality assurance, which is to undertake external quality audit of institutions, can be paralleled by the mental habit of advanced musicians to seek out advice as needed and displaying persistence during times of struggle. And finally, another task of the quality assurance, which is to carry out quality assessment exercises, it can be paralleled with this mental habit of advanced musicians to monitor their practice by focusing on aspects of their playing that can be improved. To conclude, I'd say that with the total quality management approach, quality is the responsibility of all. It is an organization-wide commitment to the development of a quality culture within the organization through the components and concepts which I've seen, for example, continuous improvement, zero defect target, etc. Now, equivalent components and concepts are part and parcel of an performing arts education. Again, through continuous improvement, targeted perfection, innovation, etc. Quality management aims at quality culture at the level of the organization on the whole, while arts education aims at quality culture at the very core base of human being, of man himself. Therefore, is there a hybridization of concepts between the two fields of art education and management? I personally do not know the extent to which each one hybridizes from each other. But what is for sure is that arts education and total quality management both have the function of upgrading and expanding a culture of quality development and a culture of innovative spirit. I end here. I again am very, very thankful to the organizers, Dr. Preeti Oza, Dr. JP, and even Dr. Sangeeta Johari, and all of the other organizers for having given me this opportunity to present this keynote address. And I thank you very much. I take leave of you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was such a wonderful presentation. And the way you have defined quality, I mean, in between your talk, Dr. Jappi was actually, messaging about something, and then he just put one liner that this is the ultimate, presentation he has experienced or seen in the field of creativity and research and quality. What a wonderful idea. What a wonderful idea. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much to you also.
And we would love to have you again and again with us on some, amazing ideas, because this is what is the, real outcome of this kind of events that cross border. When we say you have joined us from altogether a very different corner of the world, but then when you are talking about quality, and then it makes us think that, okay, this is something which can be, achieved, which can be, explored here. This is the beauty of such events, ma'am. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much to you. I thank you very much, all of you. Gap. Thank you very much.
Dr. Jappi, can we have the next speaker? I don't think sir has joined us.
Ma'am, Vijay sir has already joined. Yes, Vijay sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Jappi.
I guess Pradosh sir is yet to join the meet. So meanwhile, sir, if you can start. Before that, I would like to introduce Professor Vijay Sakhon. Professor Vijay Sakhon is an artist and department lead of interaction design at Anant National University, Ahmedabad, India. He did his bachelor's and master's in fine arts from MS University and did his second master's from Interactive Telecommunication Program, Tisch School of the Arts, New York University. He's also recipient of Nasreen Mohammadi Scholarship, MSU, and Wasimman Scholarship, NYU. Professor Sakhon has worked with Merchant and Ivory Productions in New York and later with Reliance Industries in Mumbai. He has exhibited and performed his works in India, United States, and Europe. He is deeply interested in question of inclusivity and technology, as well as developing arts as learning process through his pedagogical practices. His works are part of permanent collection of Blackheath, Ludwig Museum, Colin, and several private collections. So, sir, we are desperate to hear you. So I welcome you on behalf of Grand Academic Portal and Swarnim Startup and Innovation University, Gujarat. Sir.
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Good morning to all the esteemed guests and friends. So the topic that was given, or rather I chose, was the public sphere in the information age. And what I'm going to present is basically an excerpt from the current research I am conducting. So it's not, as Dr. Shilana's very methodical research presentation, but rather a sharing of certain thoughts, which I thought would be pivotal in order for design and arts education. If I may, Dr. Jappi, can I? So there's no presentation. I will just read, and please, I would encourage if there are any questions or any points of discussion, we can have it as I read. Okay, so there is a fundamental shift happening in our relationship with each other, material world, and ecology, and cosmos at large. The shift is happening at two levels, within and without. Within, we find people more and more insular and less in dialogue with the world, which is also the most important challenge for university as to how to bring young people in dialogue with the world and not stay within the confines of themselves. The second is privatization of the common spaces which facilitate the dialogue in society. Without understanding the shift in its modalities, in these two areas, it is difficult for us to articulate what public sphere is and its potential in the time we live in. Now, to better understand this shift, I want to paint a few pictures in front of you. So I want to begin with pandemic, which is fresh in our consciousness. There is much that is analyzed, and it is a work in progress. It will be years before substantial impact study comes out. But what became clear to all of us in the shift in understanding of public space, the possibilities of alternative in what if scenarios, the shift not all out of blue, but a long process of digitization of space and communities. Long promise of technology will save us finally seem to have gotten fulfilled. And for sure, we were able to connect with our loved ones sitting in the comfort and safety of our homes. But the question that really arose was, this was not the reality for everyone. Millions of people had to walk home, and unimaginable hardship people had to go through who were dependent on daily wages. Park that thought on one side and put another image, which I'm about to paint in front of you. It's actually from a book, Re-Enchanting the World by Silvia Federici, who I owe a lot in understanding of the commons. Owning the land and selling the land seems ideas as foreign as owning and selling the clouds or the wind. Kirkpatrick Sale quoted, when European colonizers arrived to the so-called New World and saw Native Americans live, the idea of private property was alien to them. For thousands of years, they lived with communal sharing of resources, abandoning land for it to heal back before returning to it for any activity. Energy cycle was optimally understood, respected, and adhered to. I'm quoting further from Sylvia's book. The result of this lack of attachment to private property among the native people of America was communal outlook that cleared cooperation, group identity, and culture. In India, in Indian land, for instance, at the time of European arrivals, one starved, everybody starved, making making the help they gave to the colonizers even more remarkable. The dislike for individual accumulation was so wrong that they invented the ritual of potlatch, popularly known as ritual of potluck nowadays. That is a periodic redistribution of wealth to free themselves from it. Now take the idea of recent interest in the field of geography, where the idea of volumetric sovereignty is being actively researched. To put in simple words, volumetric sovereignty in nation states asserts control over and attempt to colonize previously above and below Earth's surface. Concept of ad column, whereas whoever is the soil, whoever's is the soil, it is theirs all the way to the heaven and all the way to the hell. The root of this idea goes back to the 13th century Italian jurist Accurisius, and in common law of England during the reign of 1272 and 1307. Concept of volumetric sovereignty is challenged by scholars like Tim Ingold, where Ingold contests and representation of the ground as horizontal surface. The ground, he argues, is the actual continuous rolling up and turning over of material, leading lower and upper regions to be unremittingly inverted. The state is reliant on the ground as a fixed surface, but in order to establish sovereignty over volume, it needs to take leave of the ground level. Contrast this to the current debt crisis, which is engulfing not only individuals, but entire countries. We saw in 2008 financial crisis, the banks were bailed out, but not the individuals, which clearly tells us that the debt is a permanent condition which common folks have to live with and as a form of existence. Now put another image of research in a man-made material called graphene, a line of carbon as thick as only as atom. It can be carved onto the food items like bread, and circuits could be embedded on it with all kinds of sensors, tracking food in a global supply chain and generating data that is far beyond one's imagination at the moment. And just the day before yesterday, I had a meeting with few individuals who were architects and designers, teachers and food designers, thinking about how we can have more meaningful dialogue in the city. And why was even a need for such a meeting? Why did we want to meet and do something together? Perhaps at its core remains the desire to come out of ourselves and be in dialogue with each other, which is the primary way of living as a mature and an adult individual. With all pictures that I have painted, which included lockdown due to pandemic, to our digital extension, privatization of private property, entrapment of everyday people in perpetual circle of debt, and new material science, which brings surveillance right inside our bodies, the nature of public sphere is evolving faster than what we are imagining it to be. What does not change in the role of it? What changes is a mere form of it. But the critical point I want to draw your attention to is the tightening control of that public space and freedom to do things without surveillance net over it. It is in this context I want to draw your attention to the role of art and design in the public sphere. I'm particularly interested in the confluence point of art and design and how these confluences can be studied, inculcated in the learning processes, and can serve larger humanity. I teach at the Design University, and fundamental aim of design education is to uplift lives of people. And art's fundamental aim is to foster dialogue, be it at the individual level or societal. How then the idea of fostering dialogue and uplifting quality of life can come together? How can we build learning processes that allows the room for understanding natural processes whose modalities and timing we do not control. It is coming to terms with these uncertainties and joining with it. And perhaps we can find ways to live that remolds our humanity in a radically different way than that has led to the deep ecological humanitarian crisis we have brought ourselves into in the last few centuries. The choice is ours, to what kind of world we want ourselves and for generations to come. So, Dr. Jappi, this is a small excerpt from larger research which I'm doing, and I thought it would be interesting to share it with, the scholars like Dr. Shelena and yourself and others. And I'll be happy to sort of, reflect on it if there are any, any thoughts or any questions.
Certainly, sir. We can take all the questions and queries later on.
Sure,
Meanwhile, I can invite our another speaker.
Sure, sir.
Now I invite Professor Helena Hukum Singh. She is in charge of performing arts at the MIE and is the assistant coordinator of the MIE Language Studies Doctoral Research Laboratory. She has a PhD in Eco-Linguistics and Education. Her research interests include meditation, mindfulness, children's literature, eco-linguistic, holistic education, and drama. She also writes, publishes, and performs poetry, as well as facilitates creative writing and performance workshops. She was awarded the Prix de Poésie Award Monique in 2019. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. It was difficult to pronounce. Now, I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of Grand Academic Portal and Swarnim Startup Innovation University. Ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. And that's absolutely fine. I think you did a very good job with the pronunciation of the French. So my presentation for today is Creativity, Identity, and Ecology, Performance through the Lens of Eco-Linguistics. This is a co-authored paper and co-created presentation between myself and Dr. Shamim Uzirali, and we are both academics of the Mauritius Institute of Education. So Dr. Shamim is the coordinator for the Language Studies Doctoral Research Lab and a member of the French department, and I am the assistant coordinator for the lab, and I am handling the responsibilities for performing arts for the Institute. So to give you a little bit of an introduction to what this presentation is about, and I will try to share my screen in some few minutes as well. The aim of the presentation is based on research work that we carried out in 2020, right before the pandemic, right before the lockdown in Mauritius. It was around January, February of that year. In March, we went into lockdown. And the work that we were doing was using eco-linguistics, which is a paradigm in a field of linguistics, to reflect critically on the creative performance of 6 holistic education trainee educators in Mauritius. And these are educators who are studying what is known as the Teacher's Diploma Primary Holistic Education. And they will go on to be teachers in primary schools because the MIE's focus is on teacher education. So these 6 trainees followed this diploma program, which had been introduced into the Mauritian landscape and into Mauritian schools in 2017. And the subject areas that are under their responsibility for teaching are values, music, visual arts, and performing arts. So in terms of drama, dance, and they also have health and physical education. So the drama component in particular, as a creative practice, provides the space for the investment of diverse topics and multimodal communication, so making use of different modes and forms of communication. And the creative performance in question for these trainees was carried out, prepared and ready to perform as a short sketch in the context of the Mauritius National Day celebrations. And this incorporated role play, body movement, and artwork. And what was particularly interesting for us to use eco-linguistics, which I will go into soon, is that they really touched upon ecological issues of the country, especially in relation to social justice, which was meshed into the performance and into their discourse around post-colonial national identity. So the Mauritius National Day sketch that these trainees prepared and were rehearsing for performance, it was an original text and it was approximately 15 minutes for the whole performance. And the performance made use of Creole Mauricien. So this is Mauritian Creole as the language for the script. And it incorporated not only the verbal discourse, but it took a multimodal approach, making use of body movement and original artwork, thereby extending beyond language towards multimodality. And the references for this are Mills 2009 and Pennycook 2017. The Mauritius National Day sketch was intended for performance on the occasion of the Mauritius celebration of independence. And the plot of the sketch was focused on the interpretations of the national flag from the perspective of the fictional characters of a mother and a daughter. I was involved as a resource person who provided these trainee educators with feedback during their rehearsals, suggestions in terms of staging, blocking, movement, dialogue, and voice. And it was through my involvement, giving them that support, that the nature of the project and the research evolved. Let me try to share my screen with you. Can you all see that? Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, great. So to tell you a little bit about ecology and ecolinguistics. So ecolinguistics is my particular area of interest for doctoral study, and it's a paradigm of linguistic research that's also known as ecological linguistics. It widens sociolinguistics to consider not only the social context in which languages are embedded, but the environment. And so really ecolinguistics looks at the role of language in life-sustaining relations of humans and nature. And one of the key things is searching for inspirational forms of language, which can help us to respect other species and the ecosystems that life depends on. And this is from the work of Professor Aaron Stibbe, 2015. So when we think of linguistics, we know we're dealing with language. And the idea is that our linguistic choices, the patterns of choices that we make in relation to our discourse, impacts on how we treat one another, how we treat the natural world, in terms of how we think, how we talk, and how we act. So ecolinguistics really looks at the discourse and the language that impacts on forming, maintaining, influencing and destroying relationships between humans and other life forms, the environment. And eco-critical discourse analysis is one method of analysis that's often used within this field. So ecolinguistics challenges us to think responsibly about our interconnectedness and to develop awareness of our language, our patterns of linguistic choices. And within the field of education, within the sector of education as well, it is fundamental in raising awareness amongst the younger generations. In Mauritius in particular, it is very, very important with regard to examining educational issues, general ecological issues, and especially in relation to holistic education. The methods that were used were non-participant observation. So myself and my colleague, Dr. Uzirali, we watched the performances during the rehearsals. And why I say rehearsals is because we went into lockdown just before the the students could really perform. We had a number of different protocols that were in place. And so it was unfortunate that they couldn't do their final performance. But we were involved in providing them with the support, but we were not involved in writing the script. The script was their choice, the language was their choice, the thematic choices, overall decision-making process was all about the trainees and what they wanted to communicate. And after this period of non-participant observation, we carried out focus group discussions with the trainees. They were asked semi-structured interview questions just to prompt their responses in relation to the creative choices that they had made regarding ecological and post-colonial national identity issues. And the questions focused on the participants' inspirations for the text that they had written, for the artwork that they had used, for the staging choices that they had made, for the ecological issues that they addressed, and the significance of ecological issues in Mauritius to the participants themselves on an individual level. What were the strategies they used in the performance to transmit this message to the audience? Why did they choose to use Créole Mauricien and in relation to expressing these ecological social justice ideas? So there was a dichotomy of characterization between the two in terms of the performance itself, in terms of this performance artwork that they had created. The mother and the daughter characters were interpreted in relation to the colors of the flag and in relation to the ecological matters that were connected to the flag in their performance. And so it was a way for them to encourage the audience to reflect and to connect with a country's post-colonial national identity. So the interpretation of the flag from the perspective of the mother was linked to red for the flamboyant, blue for the oceans, yellow for the sun, and green for agriculture. Just in case those of you who are not familiar with the flag, there's a little picture I'll go back to here. So our flag is red, blue, yellow, and green. And the interpretation from the daughter was focused on red for danger of losing time, loss of blood and lives from our colonial history. And then blue for the destruction of the coral reefs, fighting against privatization of the public beaches that are now being sold to foreign buyers. Yellow for the sun, burning on the backs of slaves and indentured laborers who struggled for the freedom and struggled for independence. And green for the ecological devastation on the land in terms of deforestation and extinction of flora and fauna. And Mauritius, despite the way it is presented as a tourist destination, is one of the most ecologically devastated countries on the earth, directly at the hands of human activity. So the transition between the 2 points of view from the character of the mother and from the character of the daughter was done through movement. So moving these very large A1 size artworks that the group had created themselves, these vivid images, but the movement was done in relation to the dialogue that was being delivered and the tone that they wanted to create, the atmosphere on stage. And so the actors would hold up the pieces, blocking their faces on purpose, and they would either glide and lightly flutter across the stage because they wanted to show the serenity of the red of the flamboyant trees moving in the breeze, or when it would flip over and the artwork would represent the destruction and the violence, there would be heaving, jerking, much more aggressive, much more pained movements, slowly falling lower and lower to the floor. And it was similar for the yellow of the sun. The flag would appear as bright and held by the actors, moving slowly and steadily. But when it was flipped over for the daughter, it would reveal a darkened sun, darker colors, the silhouettes of the sugarcane workers, and the actors would coordinate their body movements to represent the rise and fall of the laborers and the slaves' tools as they toiled in the heat all day long. And so this created a very clear dichotomy and a very clear contrast for the audience to be able to see the difference in what the mother was saying and how the mother interpreted the flag, and what the child was saying and how the child interprets it in relation to post-colonial national identity. So the flamboyant, the sky, the ocean, and the landscape for the mother, as compared to the hourglass of time, the air pollution, the restriction, and the deforestation for the child. So in terms of that reflecting their creative choices and their sense of post-colonial national identity, we identified that there's an element of socio-ecological post-colonial identity, which is latent and emerging, ethnic and religious, socio-cultural post-colonial identity, which is very current in the present landscape, and a socio-political post-colonial identity, which is reflective of the past. So notably, transformations in search for the real, and I put that in inverted commas because it is a very subjective thing, and it is in the process of shaping and having form. Post-colonial identity are discussed as the function of dynamic changes that are happening in the current socio-ecological landscape. So we find evidence of representational inconsistencies regarding what would typically be recognized as an explicit symbol. This explicit symbol of the national flag. Here we have these inconsistencies in representation that are used through the performance to create thinking, reflection, and maybe a little discomfort in the audience to provoke that action towards change that the trainees, the participants expressed. So participants expressed an intragenerational difference regarding the symbolic representations of the 4 colors of the Mauritian flag. And while these contributing to some ambivalence with respect to the characterization of what they think of as a real identity for the nation. So here we have one participant who shared that red is the color of the flamboyant, and so on. And the colors here depict an ecological affluence, so the affluence of the country being sold in this way, being marketed and described in this way. Whereas another describes the colors as representing the diasporic, multicultural, religious identity of the people. So for this participant, red represents the Hindu culture, blue the Catholic side, yellow for the Tamils, and green for the Muslims. And the colors are depicting a multicultural identity being defined by essentialist forms of religious ancestry. So the ethnic religious identity represents a second generation and currently predominant reality, the consequential implications of which continue to guide the focus on socio-cultural issues at present. And contravening these contemporary representations, the participants expressed that elder relatives consider the origin of the 4 colors to carry a political significance of each one of the political parties that ran as candidates in their time. And at the time of the when Mauritius first gained independence. So the colors here depict a legitimized form of political ancestry. And the political identity represents the first generation realities and the past socio-political concerns which have shaped the current socio-cultural and political landscape. The ambivalence of this post-colonial Mauritius can be attributed partly to the evolution post-independence of seemingly qualitatively different transformations of group system identity. So we can infer that these differences exist because different generational groups have placed different values on certain livelihood elements, carrying cultural and emotional ties to places and activities, or express other interests related to livelihoods, ecology, and well-being. So by this, I mean the past elders having a specific emotional tie to the political dimension, or the current generations having cultural ties, but also this emerging, this latent generation having ties to ecological and well-being activities. And the desirability of a specific post-colonial identity, whether it's socio-political, socio-cultural, or socio-ecological, is thus normative and subjective. And we see how in the participants themselves, they've chosen to depict shifting identity transformations in terms of their own emerging socio-ecological system identities. To quote from them, using their words, they're intrigued by and in search of their own realities. And they draw on the perceptions about their livelihoods within the context of these current shifts. And it brings them to reconsider the symbolic representations of the colors of the flags in terms of the role of the new generation. So they do start to question themselves about this new generation, including themselves as much as the students that they work with. And consequently, the participants describe a transformative reorganization of their initial allegorical perceptions of the colors. So moving from this original depiction of ecological affluence and into ecological social justice. In terms of these ecological issues, we noted as one very dominant theme that there's an anthropocentric attitude and non-action versus the need for a more ecocentric attitude and action. And what anthropocentric means, coming from the word anthropocentrism, is about placing the human at the center. And the human at the center can be our default worldview because we are human and we understand the world from a human lens. But it can also be something that is far more utilitarian, so where we see the human at the center, higher, above, and more superior to all of life around us. And this can potentially lead to pathways of destruction. So the four main ecological issues that this performance and this sketch really expressed as a function of urbanization and increasing human economic activity were deforestation, more and more buildings are being constructed, soil erosion, air pollution from the factories, coastal and marine biodiversity loss as a result of more and more hotels invading our coastline. Coastal development and exploitation not only endanger the ocean ecosystems, but increased privatization of the beaches further threatens public access. And since then, we also had the Wakashio oil spill disaster that fundamentally changed the biodiversity of our marine and coastal life. And the participants also expressed this idea of food scarcity and insecurity. So a result of over-reliance on global trade, on urbanization, of importation for our consumption. And as one participant notes, we're destroying nature to show progress and development, but we don't realize that we are eliminating many important things we use for our consumption. And afterward, in an informal discussion that we had with the participants, the idea was for them there is you can have this unbound development, but at what cost? Because at the end of the day, when you're destroying to build and build, you can't eat concrete. And among the main reasons articulated as to why this mattered to them, the participants pointed to the overall intrinsic loss of interest amongst the youth, amongst the children that they work with, and the absence of instinctive feelings of awe, of wonder, of respect to drive there and explore and connect with nature and their local ecology. And this meant something to them as teachers, especially holistic education teachers. So some of the participants talked about we're losing the typical island side, this intrinsic joy that's associated with going to the beach, time spent playing with neighbors as a result of increased globalization and the impact of technology. Another participant describes the loss of intrinsic motivation and resilience amongst the youth in terms of interest to play football at school or otherwise to be more active in that way. And this is a direct contrast to the participants' own ecocentric, so a more ecologically centered attitude that's ultimately a function of their emerging socio-ecological identity, socio-ecological national identity. And therefore, the performance and this artwork, this questioning that they wanted for the audience was a call for an awareness from other people to acknowledge how these ecological issues are so pertinent to our country. And in conclusion, for this presentation and for the paper, the Mauritius National Day sketch, it provided these trainee educators in holistic education with a space to reflect on ecological issues affecting Mauritius and to express through performance the need for ecological social justice. It afforded them the opportunity to move beyond the ambivalence of post-colonial Mauritius towards a more ecocentric attitude and more ecocentric action, inviting the audience to do the same. So using the dialogue, using the flag, the symbol of the nation, as a way to invite the audience to do the same. And the performance really was about connecting with the history and the ecology of Mauritius to recognize the historical colonial imprint on the current ecological landscape and not turn a naive or an indifferent blind eye to the ecological devastation that has happened and continues to occur. Because Mauritius in itself does not have an indigenous population. The indigenous population is the flora and the fauna, and so much of which is now extinct because of human activity. And our colonial history is one that's built on exploitation of the land. And that notion of exploitation continues to permeate into the current socio-cultural realities. And in relation to the desirability for a specific post-colonial national identity, especially in the broader sense of socio-ecological cultural national identity, the participants chose to depict shifting identity transformations in terms of their own emerging socio-ecological system identities. They drew on perceptions about their livelihoods within the context of these current shifts, and this brought them to reconsider their symbolic representations of the Mauritian flag in the Mauritian National Day sketch, so as to guide ecological awareness, reflections, ecocentric attitudes, and call for action rather than passivity from the Mauritian audience and from the population more generally, notably the new and the young generations with regard to these environmental changes, the ecological damage, and encouraging people to protect the local ecosystem. And this is what they used drama and artwork and movement and language to express, really invite that change that they wish to see and really begin to build a new foundation for a potential post-colonial national identity that recognizes the ecosystem as something in which our culture and people have emerged and are sustained. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I'll stop sharing my slides there.
Thank you, Dr. Helena, for such a wonderful presentation. And the best part of your talk, the way I could, relate to this, was that when you said that Mauritius doesn't have any indigenous kind of population, and so very effortlessly you have coined that word that flora and fauna is the indigenous, population. I mean, it is such an inclusive statement. It is such a deep statement that we are not only talking about human beings here, but then the entire, almost every possible element. And it's such a gracious thing to give that status of indigenous, population to flora and fauna. Amazing, ma'am. Thank you so very much. And I think your presentation has raised some more issues rather than, answering some more issues. And this is what is the need of the hour, as we all can see here. And maybe if we can, invite some young minds like you to again talk about all these issues, and in that process, if we can find some collective solutions or maybe answers, maybe this is a kind of a worth practice. Again, thank you so much for being with us, and looking forward to having you more with us, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker for today, I would like to invite Dr. Urmi Satyan, ma'am, and would like to give a brief introduction of Dr. Urmi Satyan, ma'am. Dr. Urmi Satyan is a faculty member at the Department of Languages, Literature and Aesthetics, School of Liberal Studies, Pandit Deen Dayal Energy University in Gandhinagar. She has 14 years of experience of teaching at graduate and PG levels. And Dr. Satyan's research interest lies in the Indian diaspora, post-colonial literature, and gender studies. She has also worked very extensively in social linguistics, literature and psychoanalysis, and also forayed into the corporate communication. She has presented many research papers at national and international levels, and she also has a very big body of published research papers, edited books, and journals. Her own current interest of research lies in Indian scriptures, especially with reference to Sanskrit literature and other Sanskrit language studies. As a part of her current literary research, she has visited many foreign universities like Southern Illinois University, USA, and she has also been a part of many cultural exchange programs. Would love to have Dr. Urmi Satyan today on this very informative, innovative kind of conference. Dr. Satyam ma'am, you may share and start your screen, please.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Preeti ma'am, Dr. Jappi sir. Thank you so much for providing this platform to people like me. It's really an honor to be a part of GAP, to be a life member of GAP. And ever since I have joined GAP, I see that I am being benefited. I do not know whether my presence is fruitful to GAP or not, but GAP has definitely given me a lot. So thank you so much, ma'am, for considering me and inviting me for this talk today. I hope I can add value to this valuable conference. Is my screen visible, ma'am?
Yes, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the topic that I have taken for today's discussion is literature and cultural recycling. I think it would be in sync with the previous presentations. So these are three terms which I would like to highlight. What is literature and cultural recycling? Whenever we talk about recycling, it is this image that comes to our mind, right? And this image has been coined off lately by almost all the think tanks. We all are highlighting and we all are trying to reach the goal of sustainable development goals. And ever since the SDGs are introduced, we are trying to cope up with the demand of the time. Now, when we talk about recycling, it is mainly about reusing and reducing the use of something that is considered as waste. Now, what is waste? Waste is something that is to be discarded, something that is to be abandoned, something that is not in fashion or not in vogue. But what to do with this waste? And we join this word management with the waste. Management, as we all know, is based on these five fundamentals, though there are so many others. But basically, we can consider that planning, directing, organizing, and staffing and controlling is something that can be primarily dealt with, something that we want to manage with. So when we manage waste, we have the segregation of the waste. This segregation is so very important in giving us the revival of the waste, and we come across something that is invigorating, something innovative. And when we see these kind of things which are recycled, which are revived, which are rejuvenated, we feel that there was no waste at all. We feel that everything has an inherent property to be revived. Recycling actually means revival. It is like giving life to something that is lifeless. So finding these recycled properties, we say that nothing is perishable, right? So how can culture or language or identity be perishable? Culture is also one of the prominent issue that we have started discussing since last almost post-colonial period has given us this thought to talk about culture and identity. So culture is the amalgam of all these constituents, society, behavior, history, and tradition, nation, language. And identity is something that talks about our persona, our individual as well as collective identity. So the allegory of recycling as a technical word, if we can understand culture, we want to understand, can culture be recycled? Can identity be recycled? And as in my previous slides, I have tried to explain that recycling actually means revival, cultural revival, revival of the identity. Is it a possible issue? Culture and identity are actually the intertwined concepts. Culture is reflected through habits, behavior, observation skills, rituals, art and music. It is not tangible in form, but it is representative of one's identity. Culture also makes one responsible. It, in common parlance, personalized expressions like "it never happens in my culture" or "my culture does not teach discrimination" are spoken frequently. First, to defend our age old system of convenience, and secondly, to safeguard it from all the foreign cultural infiltrations. Sometimes a person's asocial behavior incurs him or her a title of being uncultured. Culture grooms, nurtures, and molds a person's priorities and preferences. It prepares one to be lawful, just, and noble in constructing their ideologies. Culture is rooted in place, and so the geography is fundamentally present in the culture. Culture is contained in the landscape of a particular place and is maintained by the people of the place. As we have seen, the keynote speaker, Professor Ramdu, started her lecture with Namaste, and that talks about the culture that is retained in Indian diaspora in Mauritius. So culture is something that constructs our identity. It is original, and so it is imperishable. With culture, we also have the concept of multiculturalism. Again, that is also the post-colonial issue, which we all are, the academicians are dealing with. Next point comes to our presentation is, what is literature? Now, all the teachers in literature, they know Professor R.J. Rees, and he has written extensively in a book, What is Literature? In a nutshell, we can say that literature is something that mirrors the society. It discovers the truth. It explores history. It introduces fashions, and it analyzes the psychological aspects. The ancient literary texts, as we all know, are not forgotten. Say, for example, our own stories, mythologies from Ramayana, Mahabharata, are used as allegorical references even in today's life. The morals that we have learned from the stories of Panchatantra and Hitopadesh are naturally programmed into our memories. Our active listening skills preserve everything: words, rhythms, backgrounds, settings, people, and contextual references to the matter, and these treasured knowledge works as lighthouse and help us navigate our originality, our roots. Literature ranges from memes to mysteries to myths to morals to magic realism to masala movies. So everything that has been conveyed meaningfully is literature. The human culture started somewhat 70,000 years ago. That is what Noah Harari documents in his book, Homo sapiens. Noah Harari says that we have witnessed 3 giant revolutions, and they are cognitive revolution, agricultural revolution, and industrial revolution. The last industrial revolution took place just 500 years ago. And we have seen that this particular revolution, industrial revolution, has baffled human life. It has given us binary results. It has facilitated our lives. And this facility has, to a certain extent, if I can borrow the word from Wordsworth, it has made us savage torpor. It has made us, to a certain extent, zombies. With the inception of digital era, virtual space has replaced the real space, real life space. In short, this digital era has changed the human culture that started almost 70,000 years ago, as Noah Harari documents. And now with the entry of Alexa, artificial intelligence has occupied its special position in human life. And now we realize that we all need to return to nature. We all need to revive our lost connection to the nature. We all need to revive something that was inherited and something that we have lost behind. And that is the prime motto of SDG. When we look back, we Indians mostly look back to Vedas. And when we see Mandukya Upanishad says, Pranavo dhanuhu sharohi atma brahmatat lakshyam uchyate apramattena vedhavyam sharavat tanmayo bhavet. Mandukya Upanishad says we all need to practice apramattena. That is, we are not supposed to be zombies. We are not supposed to be lazy. We will have to be active. We will have to transform the discourses into action. And we will have to be as speedy as an arrow. 21st century is the time of speed, right? We are in the time of 4G and 5G. But this concept of speed has already been given to us in our Vedas. So when we talk about cultural recycling, we look back and we see that things had already been taught to us. We have inherited all this wisdom. And we need to, somewhere down the line, we see that we have forgotten our ancestral value system. We see Nada Yoga. Now, Nada Yoga is all about the sound and the importance of sound. Pranav, when Mandukya Upanishad also says Pranavo Shara. So, Pranav is actually the sound of Om, and we all know that it is Om is the sound of universe. So, literature and sustainability has already been propagated by ancient Indian philosophical system. We can see that reflection in Nada Yoga. This system believes in the practice of Om, which is the first sound of cosmos. Nada Yoga says Om has cosmic presence. The sound of Om is eternal, as it is the original sound of the universe. And we all know the maxim, Nada Brahma hai. It means that sound is eternal. Sound never perishes. So these theories, the only thing is that we need to work on the past scriptures. There are theories in post-colonial literature, in post-colonial times, where we feel that looking back is not the only solution. But when we look back and when we put the wisdom statements into action, we would surely attain the SDGs which are introduced to us and which we all are trying to attain. The power of sound, as we all know, can be seen in the Greek theaters, where the acoustic properties of hall makes the actor's voice more prominent and audible. The sound of recitation has meditational properties. And so some poems like Daffodils, or Tinton Abbey, or To a Skylark, or Ode to a Grecian Urn are still preserved in our memories, because these poems are not only about the visual narratives, these poems are also about the sound effect that they have. When we read To a Skylark, we all know that the delightful sound of this skylark, this small bird, is somewhere inscribed into our memory. These and many other poems have survived beyond times. They are not ordinary. Their meanings, rhymes, and lyricality give them life. John Keats rightly says in Ode on Grecian Urn, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. So, to take care of the sustainable development goals, which have been introduced to us by UN, and then we all are working very hard to attain these goals. The modern architect is also active. And we have seen in the previous presentation of Ms. Helena, where she has talked about the biophilic creativity, art and creativity. We have the eco-friendly school playgrounds. Now, the modern architecture has taken care of the eco-friendly biophilic art and creativity, where modern playgrounds, college campuses, and residential areas have come up with some agenda, some mission that sustainability, the nature should be preserved, and the ecological system should not be affected. The modern concept of, which we have seen in our behavior also, which we have seen in our lifestyle also. Of lately, we have also noticed that the concept of farm stay or cottage living or village villa is an effort to return to nature. The tree houses is also a new concept. And shikaras in Kashmir is a well-known artistic way to stay connected to nature. This biophilic architecture believes in reusing the age-old system of living, reproducing, the organic pleasure, and reviving the forgotten memories. The tiring, exhausting, and demanding clock-controlled urban life finds solace with nature. Nature creates a familial rapport with us. Nature, with its fertility quotient, offers us a mother's lap, a father's shade, a brother's vibrancy, and a sister's love. Nature is a family, and as Vijay sir has quoted, that owning a land was not at all a harmonious, conscious idea in ancient time. So we cannot be the owner of the land, we are the protector of the land. And what nature expects in return is nothing but a hand of a caretaker. We all can be these caretakers. To make the whole idea a little practical, I had a chance to visit Sabarkantha with my university students, and we saw there that we went there to understand how the village panchayat works. There we came to know about the making of fertilizer. Along with cow dung and cow urine, one more important element that is used is the soil. But the more important thing is that this soil is taken especially from around a banyan tree. The reason is that a 100-feet long vast banyan tree is an abode of millions of birds, and the bird droppings make the soil more fertile. Where can we find a better example than this to understand recycling and sustainability? And this is our culture. Our culture gives us, our literature gives us everything. We only need to put the idea into action. Banyan tree has been an inspiration to many poets as well. Rabindranath Tagore has he has personified banyan tree and has said, "Oh, you shaggy-headed banyan tree standing on the bank of the pond, have you forgotten the little child, like the birds that have nested in your branches and left you?" One more poem that I could collect is from Dilip Chitre, who talks about the 200-year-old banyan tree and whose roots lay beyond, deeper than all our lives. So these are some important documentation where we can see that literature and culture have the innate ability to survive. We also remember Shakuntala from Abhigyan Shakuntalam, where she used to offer water to a deer through her cup palms. Mahashweta Vrutant, we all are aware of, Mahakavi Banbhat has written. And she used to go to the trees, and trees used to drop flowers and fruits to her. We also remember Sita ji from Sundarkand, where she says, Sunahi binaya mama bita ashoka, satya nama karu haru mama shoka. She says, you are Ashok and you need to prove your name. You need to signify your name by taking away all my pains. So she talks to a tree, and we have seen multiple examples in literature where characters, where personas, the real life stories, where people talk to nature, they talk to the tree, they talk to rivers, they talk to mountains. And Bhumi Suktam is also there. Narsi Mehta is also one of the poets, not only poets, but he is a Mahasant. He says, Vrukshama Bijatum, Bijama Vrukshatu. The whole theory, whole philosophy of regenerating and recycling is there in one of the lines by Narsi Mehta. So, since ages, we have seen that things have been documented in our literature, in our culture. Since ages, we see that literature has been nurturing our emotions for nature. We know all these examples. Our Vedas, or rich reservoir of stotras or suktas, have extensively talked about nature and human life. We know that the aesthetic greatness of Bhumi Suktam celebrates the sublime grandeur of earth and the concept of fertility. The point that I want to present is that sustainability is a pan-Indian concept. But the irony of the time is that we have become unconcerned towards nature. We are readers of nature to a certain extent. We will have to be preservers of nature. We need to develop public sense and discipline, and we need to actively participate in protecting nature. Rather than teaching about nature, we need to make our children love nature. We need to inspire children to play in soil with clay and also with clay. Clay has anti-depression element. Its touch refreshes us. The happiness and positivity quotient would be surely higher in children engaged in such activities. So this is something where I would like to say that sustainability is an Indian concept and the socio-ecological landscape will be protected with our efforts. Thank you so much, Preeti ma'am.
Thank you, Urmi ma'am. And such an indigenous, such a wonderful, kind of twist in the entire concept of culture, literature, sustainability, art, and aesthetics. If any queries, questions, I think Dr. Anita Sharma ma'am is here with us. Anita ma'am, welcome to the board. And then Dr. Anita Sharma is our ex-president of Grand Academic Portal. We welcome you, ma'am. Anita ma'am, Anita Sharma ma'am.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I think it's now good noon, sharp 12. I'm in college actually, so the video is not possible. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, congratulations, Urmi ma'am, for such a wonderful presentation. Recycling, all the affair. I was just caught up with one, phrase which you used during your presentation. That was the cultural recycling. I think that somewhere in your slides you used the word. So during the presentation, I was just caught up with that, phrase. When we say cultural recycling sort of, thing. So do you think cultural also is a kind of, thing which goes into a dustbin, or it's a wastage, or it could be dumped down at one, particular stage, and then it could again be, recycled in another, way? Because my opinion here is a bit different. Culture is the energy, source of energy, spiritual energy for me. And when we say culture, we are deeply rooted into the culture, means spiritually we are quite vibrant. That is what I mean by this, phrase. And if culturally we are very vibrant, that means culture never dies, as energy can never die in the atmosphere. We all know the principles of energy, which can never be destroyed nor be given to some other source. It remains in the universe in any kind. So I think culture has to be there in the universe in any kind, but recycling culture, that I don't go with that, but rather I would say that culture no doubt has a greater impact on the language and the society as a whole. So when we talk about the culture, I think the language and society aspect has to be together. So just throw some light on that, cultural the recycling perspective. Otherwise, the presentation was
Thank you, ma'am.
wonderful. A great hearing to you after such a long gap. Nice meeting you, one of my best friend, as I know you by heart. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Yeah. Preeti, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Anita, ma'am, it is so nice to have you on board after such a long time. I think we have been caught up in so many other activities, but it is always a pleasure, Anita Sharma, ma'am, to have you with us. And her queries and observations are always, adding some other dimension. Urmi, ma'am, we would love to have your, understanding on that, please.
Yes. So the only point that I wanted to draw attention is that when we talk about recycling, normally the thing that comes to our mind is reproducing and reusing. To reproduce something, we will have to perish something. So the allegory that I have taken from from the waste management is that even if we try to destroy waste, we do not destroy it, we recycle it, we rejuvenate it, and we give a life to it. If we cannot destroy waste, how can we destroy culture? Culture cannot be destroyed, as you have already, you have rightly mentioned, Anita ma'am. The point that I wanted to bring out on platform is that we cannot destroy even waste. Nothing is waste, that is what I said. Nothing is perishable. Everything is rejuvenated. Everything is revived. And so is the case with culture. With multiculturalism, the hybrid culture comes in, right? So culture never perishes, and you have rightly said that culture gives us energy, and that's why I have taken from Mandukya Upanishad, where it says that pranav is the only thing that we need to follow. The sound, as the sound theory, sound itself has therapeutic energy, which is utilized these days. So nothing perishes. That was the point that I wanted to bring. But when we talk about recycling, the image that comes to our mind is waste management and reusing and reproducing. So I wanted to say that nothing perishes. Even a waste, even something that is to be abandoned, something that is to be discarded, can also be given life by utilizing the resources and by putting and by transforming our ideas into action. So that was my point.
I think let's kill the cultural biases. Rest, everything is fine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So nice to have this kind of deliberations on such platforms. It's always, kind of a very intriguing sometimes to kind of, having a lot of conviction in our points also, and at the same time accepting the other point of view also. Thank you, Dr. Urmi ma'am and Dr. Anita Sharma ma'am. And going ahead with the program, our next speaker is trying to join us from the US, having little difficulty because of the time span. Meanwhile, I would like to introduce Professor Dr. Catherine Myers. Catherine Myers is a painter, basically, whose area is mainly on oil paintings, and her recent works in video have been significantly inspired and informed by her engagement and research on the art and culture of India. So this is again a very kind of a cross-cultural, kind of work what we are going to witness now. In addition to her creative work, she has developed a series of video interviews with contemporary Indian artists, and also has curated several exhibitions on Indian art. She has exhibited her work widely in the US and India. Grants have included Fulbright Fellowship to India in 2002 and again in 2011. Individual artist grants in painting and new media from the Connecticut Commission on Arts and Culture in 1991 and 2012. Mari Walsh Sharp Space Program grants in 91 and 92. Ms. Myers also have received her BA from St. Xavier's in Chicago and MFA in painting from University of Wisconsin-Madison. It's always a pleasure to have such a kind of versatile personality amongst us. We are running her videos and slides, and meanwhile, she's also trying to join us if the network and the technology permits. So, sir, we can start with her presentations. Audio not playing, sir, I guess. Sir, audio not playing.
Yes, ma'am.
Increased over the years. Vivekananda had many supporters, among them some very well-known authors who helped spread the word and popularize Indian ideas. Also, a very powerful influence were Annie Besant and Jiddu Krishnamurti from the Theosophic Society. Krishnamurti lived part-time in California and had an immense following. Aside from philosophy and religion, there was an increased interest in Indian concepts that occurred through the study of iconography and works of art, discussed by influential scholars and curators such as Ananda Coomaraswamy, and later curators such as Stella Kramrich from the Philadelphia Museum of Fine Arts. Coomaraswamy left an indelible imprint on the work of many American galleries and museums, and his work influenced a wide range of curators, art historians, and writers. Aside from philosophy, I will discuss some early influences of Indian art and culture on the work of American artists. Many abstract artists of this time were looking for an expressive means that was appropriate to their generation, while exploring their desires for universal spiritual truths, as well as mining at truths of their own particular religious heritage, whether that be Judaism or Christianity. Many of these artists were drawn to the ritual, myth, and mysticism found in Native American and Eastern cultures, as well as to Jungian ideas, particularly concepts such as the collective unconscious and the notion of universal archetypal forms such as the mandala. They read widely from Hindu and Buddhist and Taoist texts and were in regular contact with representatives from these cultures and their Western students in the United States. Reinhardt's paintings employ subtle hues of a single color and a non-reflective surface. That one needs to stay with the paintings for a while until the forms emerge is the precise point of his work. His works have been compared to the mandala as a ritual aid to meditation. Much of his work is a response to his studies of Western and Eastern mysticism. He studied Asian art at New York University and attended the influential lectures of the Japanese Buddhist scholar D.T. Suzuki at Columbia in the 1950s. He also taught Indian art at Brooklyn College. These are some other Eastern cultural influences that occurred in American culture in the 1960s and 70s. There is a growth of comparative religion courses in universities, which exposed many for the first time to Eastern religions. There's also the emergence of comparative mysticism and esotericism, and also the establishment of an international and trans-religious institutions and forums, as well as the cultivation of interfaith dialogue. So this was an incredibly interesting time in which there was an explosion of different ideas and different religions and comparative religious practices in American culture that had a great influence on many artists. These are some. Moving on into the 70s and 80s, another major influence that grew from the earlier influences was the New Age movement of the 70s and 80s, which has been much criticized. It was considered to be a decentralized Western social and spiritual movement that seeks universal truth in the attainment of the highest individual human potential. It combines aspects of spirituality, cosmology, esotericism, alternative medicine, various religious practices, nature, and environmentalism. It's characterized by an eclectic and individual approach to spirituality. But some critics of New Ageism describe it as warm and fuzzy, and that it appropriates the term spirituality only to empty it of meaning by wrenching it from its religious context. So it's this kind of general idea of the East, the esoteric East, the spiritual East, and all these different beautiful individual very specific concepts from Indian culture get kind of muddled together during the New Age movement. It was also the age of the guru, again popularizing the idea of Indian culture in the US, particularly people like the very popular Deepak Chopra. It was along with that were books critiquing this phenomena. Some books that had a profound influence on artists in the 60s, particularly artists during the minimal abstraction movement, were Ajit Mukherjee, his books on Tantra art. And this really appealed to American artists looking for a way out of the idea that the West owned abstract art. Although American artists may not have understood the deep concepts of Tantra, Mukherjee's book, to some extent, exoticized and mystified Tantra. For artists interested in Indian thought, the imagery was highly influential. This is one artist's account of how influential the book was on his work. He says, this book reproduced paintings that mapped the cosmic onto the everyday world. They were created as spiritual practices, not by professional artists. These images represented the subtle anatomy of enlightened persons through chakras and auras, and subtle levels of the external world, fields of boundless energy, astrological configurations, and they provided pathways into pure consciousness. For example, mandalas or yantras are sacred power diagrams that convey the viewer inward from the border through gates to a central focal point, the bindu, which simultaneously evokes the silent center of the cosmos and the artist viewer self. This quotation about the influence of Mukherjee's books comes from the first artist whose work I'll talk about, Michael Peter Kane. Michael Peter Kane's practice emerged while he was a student at Yale University, working with very experimental sound and light sculptures. He encountered Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and began practicing transcendental meditation, and later taught at the school that the Maharishi founded in Fairfield, Iowa. He spent great lengths of time in India studying art and meditation and studying traditional Indian sculptural techniques such as repoussé and casting. He was a recipient of the American Institute of India Studies Fellowship. And this is a very large work made with the repoussé technique. He worked with artisans in Varanasi. I have a photo of one of the studios a bit later. And the patterns that are embossed on these usually come from very, very specific patterns found in traditional Indian art. Michael Peter Kane. This is a quote of how Michael describes his work, that it reenacts ornament on the surface of geometric volumes composed of spheres and cones. These powerful forms refer to the primary abstraction of 60s minimal art, as well as the elemental geometries of tantric diagrams and early European alchemical cosmological symbols. Articulated on primary forms, the reenactment of ancient Indian ornament juxtaposes the simple and the complex, the organic with the mechanical, and the sacred with the mundane. Following are some images of Michael Peter Kane's sculpture. Some are very minute and of bronze and quite heavy, with these patterns drawn from very specific surfaces and imagery, like the mane of the lion in a Durga image. And so these are kinds of things he would research in the American Institute of India Studies archives or from numerous photographs he would take during his travels in India. He calls them sort of enlivened bindus. By contrast, these are from very larger repoussé sculptures that were created and cast in India, and then they were shipped back to Iowa to a studio to have the surfaces completed. And these are some forms of a celestial tree that grows downward with the roots in the air. This is a photo of one of the studios that Kane worked regularly in Varanasi, and these were shops that normally made religious items, and he said they were quite interested to collaborate with him on different types of works of art. Charlotte Kane, who is now deceased, is Michael Peter Kane's wife. She practiced and taught transcendental meditation and studied miniature painting in Shamba during her Fulbright fellowship with Vijay Sharma. Many of her small works reference the form of columns and Rangoli in India and are painted with miniature painting techniques on paper and silk. Some works reference specific forms and patterns found in miniature painting, such as by Nine Silk of Gular. In Charlotte's work, she talks about combining different traditions in her work, the court style of the miniature, with the more common or everyday ritual practice of drawing columns of Rangoli on the threshold of homes, lines that she says turn back on themselves endlessly, evoking a sense of the infinite. Her own prior history working with minimal abstraction began to fuse with forms and imagery drawn from these varied traditions. In works such as these, she paints on old paper where the text is barely visible, or creates the illusion of text herself. A stripe pattern that's repeated in many of her pieces makes reference to both the work of her favorite Pahari miniature painter Ninesuk, as well as the painted steps of South Indian temples. In these works, she references the shape and form of the many Shiva lingams that can be seen on the Ghats in Varanasi, where they live for many, many months at a time. Like many Western artists, Julie Evans was drawn to the refined techniques of miniature painting, which she studied with Ajay Sharma in Jaipur, as well as the rich colors and collision of patterns in Indian decorative art. This is what she says about her work and influences. Indian miniature paintings carry an extremely powerful intimacy that I find compelling, which has affected the scale, details, and structure of my work. I use many of the materials, methods, tools, and palettes of these traditional paintings as well, and play with some of their formal structures, including borders, broken in some unexpected places, compressed space, and stacked compositions. The influence of Indian art had a profound influence on artists such as Julie Evans. Not only was there a reversal of the massive scale of the abstract expressionist work, but the idea of color, pattern, and decoration itself had been really frowned upon in prior ages. The interest in India and the influence of Indian art on American art really changed a lot of this, the acceptance of this idea of luminous color and pattern, and a whole pattern and decoration painting movement that emerged also in the 70s. Some of Evans' shapes are created by a spirograph, thus melding the use of a vintage drawing apparatus with ancient Indian shapes. Here Evans states some additional influences, things experienced during her many visits to India, including during a Fulbright fellowship. In India, the extremes of color, sound, and movement can be suddenly stilled by the silence of a shrine. I consciously refer to and create similar contrasts, looking for these collisions conceptually, pairing the spiritual and the pop, East and West, traditional and contemporary, representational and abstract, micro and macro, as well as formally through the use of paint, painting transparent layers over opaque layers, fast blurs of color slowed down by finer details. She created a particular body of work in collaboration with the miniature painter Ajay Sharma that she had studied with in Jaipur. She created luminous background patterns and colors, and he placed particularly representational elements within them and some patterns. I'm going to finish with a few words about my own work. I don't feel that in my work I'm recycling Indian culture as much as responding to India itself, because as an artist with a strong interest in architecture, I find in the Indian urban scene an encyclopedic and often hallucinatory density of material from contrasting epochs and traditions. Sumptuously carved and decorated structures often push up against dark cement boxes adorned by the patina of age in a climate of diverse weather conditions from monsoons to drought. Pathway for pilgrims to the river. In my works, we see collisions and mutations between form and structure, evolving both incrementally over time as well as through rapid and uneven development. This reflects changing taste, values, and different social conditions. This body of work in particular was based on the recent destruction of historic section of Varanasi to create a pathway for pilgrims to the river. And it is also influenced by Indian miniature painting in the sense that my work of scale really compressed inward once I started traveling to India and really began to appreciate the influence of the miniature and the intimate scale of the miniature. But the color is not so much influenced by Indian painting, it is just the presence of being in India itself. And thank you for this opportunity to make this a brief presentation.
So now we are moving to the last speaker of the day. And then we have scheduled presentation from 2 to 4. So all the presenters are requested to remain present between 2 to 4. The certificate for the presentation and the expert panelist will be issued by the next week, and we will share it with you by email. I would like to invite Dr. Gitanjali Chauhan. She is currently working at Professor CVM University, Vallabh Vidyanagar. She is an analyst of agriculture economics, and her current areas of interest are behavioral economics, information economics, micro and macroeconomics, strategic management, business environment, and dynamics of business, international business. And she is serving as the occasional consultant to select industries also. She has contributed significantly in the area of research and consultancy. So now I would like to invite Professor Gitanjali Chauhan.
Thank you very much, sir, for the warm welcome.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, GAP, for giving me this opportunity to present my work. This is an emerging topic. As always, GAP does. GAP always indulges into emerging concept while designing international conferences. And this is way ahead of time. The topic is completely new for many of us. I have tried my best to integrate these topic with globalization and digitization with hybridization. So before I begin my presentation, I would like to give you the background of this topic. The topic mainly covers the combination of globalization, hybridization, and digitization. As we all know that the world has never been more deeply connected by commerce, communication, and travel than it is today. But the pattern of globalization is shifting. We all would be agree that the pattern of globalization is shifting. Trade was once dominated by tangible goods and services, was largely confined to advanced economies and their large multinational companies. Today, global data flows are surging and digital platforms allow more countries and smaller enterprises, particularly smaller enterprises, to participate. This shift has far-reaching implication, and this shift has mainly, brought a greater degree of hybridization. And with the increasing degree of globalization, the integration is also moving ahead. Digital platforms are key to this new era of globalization. Over the past 2 decades, the large corporates have built their own digital platforms to manage suppliers, connect to customers, and enable internal communication and data sharing for employees around the world. But the diverse set of public internet platform has emerged to connect anywhere, anyone. These includes operating system, social network, digital media platform, e-commerce website, and all kind of online marketplaces. Their use of automation and algorithm derives the managerial cost of adding the new interaction practically to zero, allowing the biggest platform to support hundreds of millions of global users. Now users can more easily see detail on product, service, price, and alternative choices. And this has eliminated the intermediaries in the process. My today's presentation is focused on the integration of these 3 concepts: globalization, hybridization of culture, and digitization. I would be agree. One of the expert has commented that recycling of culture is to certain extent not viable or not acceptable to many experts. But the hybridization is always possible when we do exchange, when the international relations move to the next level, when we exchange during the time of exchange of tangible goods and services. First, automatically we kind of exchange. We automatically kind of have a cultural exchange. So that is emerging in current time. And another thing that, I mean, the hybridization also, I want to give you the brief background of that. Globalization and hybridization are also closely connected to one another. As globalization increases, hybridization of the culture also increases. And this has become a recent debate in social science in current time. Hybridization has become the part of the modern culture with increasing degree of globalization. Film industry particularly, whether it is like Hollywood or any film industry of the world, plays a very important role in shifting or hybridization of culture. They play a very important role. I take the reference of I play the reference of Bollywood film industry, which makes a which is the most leading industry for the soft economy. For USA stand for the first in soft economy with Marvel and DC characters. Every one of us would be aware of these two giants of Hollywood, that DC characters are known to all of us, like all Avengers, Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, like that. And also the Marvel, which has another set of all these characters, and that they have a very huge impact on the culture of various countries of the world. And this is so at the time of in the current visit of Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Quad meeting. There was the exchange that we come to know that Japan is the second largest soft economy in the world, which includes all the famous character of Pokemon, Naruto, Boruto, and Bleach, and Demon. All these famous characters are also a part of soft economy from Japan. So they are imposing a great impact on the upcoming generation and making a huge change or huge impact on new generation with hybridization of culture. So I share my presentation now. Ma'am, my screen is my screen visible to all of you, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So this is my, this is the collaboration that I have made of globalization, hybridization, and digitization. I have given you the background of that, how globalization is impacting hybridization along with digitization. This background already I have given you. This is where I want to focus, that hybridization of culture that primarily engage language proficiency, cross-culture competence, and regional expertise. So the integration, the degree of integration increases with the increasing globalization. Hybridization of culture automatically happens as a resultant outcome of globalization and digitization. We all, this YouTube economy has a great impact, and this has come from digitization, increasing degree of digitization. The YouTube and alike platforms are providing to be a powerful, marketing tool for global brands and established stars. It can also launch individuals from, it gives a huge opportunity to the individuals as well. A number of self-made YouTube stars have created channels that attract millions of subscribers and millions in advertisement revenue. Similarly, a number of singers have been discovered after posting videos of themselves performing on YouTube. So this is happening with the increasing digitization. As we know that trade was primarily dominated by the tangible goods and was largely confined to the advanced economy and large multinational companies. Today, global data flows are surging and digital platforms allow more countries and smaller enterprises particularly to participate. This shift has far-reaching implications. With the help of digitization, now smaller enterprises have the equal opportunity to access the market, and it allows all small countries to be the part of the global market on the same platform. Digital platform that plays a key, it is very important for a new era of globalization. Over the past 2 decades, the largest corporations built their own digital platforms to manage suppliers, contact to customers, and enable internal communication and data sharing for employees around the world. But a diverse set of public internet platform has emerged to connect anywhere, anyone. This includes operating system, social network, digital media platform, e-commerce website, and all kind of online marketplaces. Their use of automation and algorithm drives the marginal cost of adding new interactions practically to zero, allowing the biggest platform to support hundreds of millions of global users. Users can be more easily search for product, service, price, and alternative choices. This removes the case of many intermediaries in the process. Some of the common characteristics of current digitization. The small emerging economies can be the part of this new era of digitization. Particularly, the South-South trade is the fastest growing type of connection. While flowing of goods and finance have lost momentum, using cross-border bandwidth has grown 45 times larger since 2005. It is projected to grow by another 9 times in next 5 years as digital flows of commerce, information, searches, videos, communication, intra-company traffic continue to surge. Digital platforms change the economy of doing business across border, bringing down the cost of international interaction and transactions. They create market and users communities with global scale, providing businesses with a huge base of potential customers and effective ways to reach them. Small businesses worldwide are becoming the micro multinationals by using digital platforms such as eBay, Amazon, Facebook, Alibaba to connect with customers and suppliers in other countries. Even the small enterprises can be born global. 86% of tech-based startups are cross-border activities. The ability of small businesses to reach new markets, support economic growth anywhere. Individuals are participating in globalization directly, using digital platform to learn, find work, showcase their talent, and build personal network. Some 900 million people have international connection on social media, and 360 million take part in cross-border e-commerce. Digitization is directly connected to economy. Economics of globalization. Digitization changed the economics of globalization in several ways because it's a two-way causality kind of thing. Globalization has an impact on digitization, and digitization would have a reverse impact on economics of globalization. As digital platform becomes global in scope, they are driving down the cost of cross-border communication and transactions, allowing business to connect with customer and suppliers in any country. Globalization was once for large multinational corporations, but platforms reduce the minimum scale needed to be global, enabling small businesses and enterprises around the world to participate. As a result, new type of competitors can emerge rapidly from any corner of the world, increasing pressure on industry income. At the end, I want to conclude that all three of the concepts globalization, hybridization of culture and digitization are closely connected to one another, and they are having impact on one another. Hybridization is ongoing condition of all human culture. Hybridity is the, it's an ongoing condition of all human culture, which contain no zone of purity. There is no pure culture that we may see around the world. All cultures are in some or the other manner, they are affected by the culture worldwide. Because of this, they undergo continuous process of transculturation. In this sense, hybridization is a tautology, and globalization has brought about nothing more than the hybridization of hybrid cultures. Maybe there is no recycling of the culture, but the hybridization of the culture is very much possible. That emerges with the more and more interaction with the world, or more and more globalization or digitization that increases, ever increasing. So we are experiencing a give and take among a culture that encounters each other, multifaceted and complex working of forces. However, the nagging question remain about who has given and taken what has been, what is the result of such give and take within the existing industrial framework, and what the implication of the answer of this question are for the cultural globalization debate. So there is a scope for further research also, that in this give and take, what are the pros and cons of this give and take relationship when we exchange culture while exchanging tangible goods and services. We also tend to exchange culture. So in this give and take relationship, it's a debatable issue that who is taking what and what amount of impact it is making on the culture and the upcoming generation. And then hybridization is very much possible on cultural product. First of all, culture of the any country got affected before affecting the anything else, including lifestyle of the people. We also tend to imitate, borrow, we borrow, we appreciate, and we have a mutual learning kind of thing. And then also this also happened with the cultural production or the exchange of the culture. So I would like to conclude with this, that hybridization of the culture is the result of globalization and digitization. But in return, this has reverse impact on the degree of globalization and digitization also. Recently, in the earlier time in 1995, the world was connected, the whole world was connected through WTO, where all the member countries were given the equal rights and opportunities on the global platform. Whereas in the recent time, especially after COVID-19 pandemic, world is selecting. The countries are selecting the particular countries with whom they want to have a cultural exchange, as well as the exchange of goods and services. So they are, all the countries have become selective while doing this cultural exchange, as well as the tangible goods exchange. Thank you very much, sir and madam, for giving me this opportunity to present this work in front of on such platform. Thank you again.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a very interesting take on the global media exchanges, some of the icons, some of the intercultural, sensitivities. So with this, we come to the end of part 1 of our conference today. We will join back at 2 o'clock with some of the interesting paper presentations. So thank you once again, and see you all at 2 o'clock.